this is the first video that I go over the backend of the bookkeeping interface. In the backend, I have to count the number of the unique invoice like this one. Okay, you see the first 3 transactions. We have a purchase for the first one, revenue for the second one, and then an interbank transaction for the third one. For the 4th transaction, you see the same invoice number under the transaction number. It happens because I have to enter a settlement for this one. It comes out for the second time. Because I'm settling the first one by the check P1 and I settle the same invoice by the check P2. This could happen, right? Because you might pay in installments. That's why in the backend, I have to count the invoice only when it comes out for the first time, but not when it comes out again. This might be a different case when you count the settlement. That's why the unique reference is very important. So let's say if you put 2, then I'm going to count it as a new invoice. That's why this invoice has to be exactly the same as this one when you settle it. And you see I set the validation. You can't enter anything. So it avoids the problem of garbage in and garbage out, right? So I'm going to create this in our template. So let me add the column of transaction num count. Let me close that. Since this one is a backend column, I'm not going to add that to the field list and the translations in other languages. So it's just in English. So this one is a trans num count. It is going to count the invoice, returning individual invoices. So let me select that, Control 1. Let me just fill that with dark color. And the font is going to be in yellow. Okay, so this time, let me just wrap all these. I just create the one, the trans count number, right? Actually, I'm going to create one more and I call it system trans number. Okay, so this one is going to be equal to the transaction type and, okay, I just do it here. Transaction type and the transaction number. Okay, actually, I'm going to add one more thing in between. Just add an underscore and the trans number. Okay, so that you will have this one. Transaction number appending to the type. R for revenue, B for interbank transfer, P for purchase. Okay, then we start working on this. For the transaction count number, we use the count if, and then the range is going to be AF, which is this one, AF. And then I need to look up for the row, which is 8. Row 8, which is the first one, AF8, and then I press F4 to lock the first cell, and put colon AF8, and let me press F4 until I lock only the column number, which is this one, AF. Okay, so this is the range, and then we move on to the criteria. The criteria have to be AF8. Let me press F4 until I lock it, so that when I roll down, it's going to count. Let me close that. Then I have all these, right? Oh, actually, you know what? Because it counts this underscore as well. So I have to change something. Hold on. For this one, I have to keep only the 1 because the transaction number count is only counting the unique number. So this time, let me go back to the formula. Just copy this, Control X to cut it. If the system number equals a string of underscore, comma, of the comma, Control V, the count if of the stuff that we just did on the system trans number. Sorry, I have to change it a little bit. If 2 conditions, if the transaction num count is not equal to underscore like this one, so that it has a transaction, and the count if stuff that we just did like this one is not equal to 1, is equal to 1, let me change that, then we will return the transaction type. Alright, actually, I'm not sure if I will add stuff to the transaction type, so usually I will put left 1. Otherwise, it returns 0. It's better to be in number. Okay, so that we have one unique revenue invoice and a second one because we have our INV002, one interbank transfer invoice, and only one invoice number 2. Alright, so for simplicity, I'll just create a validation here. So this one is called transnum validation. Just call it valid. Okay, let me just copy that. Right click and then just paste the format. Very good. I'm going to enter a value. So this one, it has to be if the transaction type is R or, okay, let me just put or the transaction type is P, transaction type equals text string P. So if the transaction type is P or, let me press Alt Enter, the condition of and the transaction type is boy, this one, the transaction type equals boy, comma, and the transaction num is not 0, comma, so we have 3 conditions of or. When the type is R or P, or when it is a bank transaction, the invoice number is not duplicate. Then, if this OR condition holds, comma, the value of true becomes 1, so that you can enter the transaction number. Alright? Otherwise, it's 0. You can't enter. Okay, so let me just put it here. Let me enter duplicate bank transaction here. Let me see if I remove. Oh, I haven't removed. Let me just remove the validation first. Let me test one. If this column, the transaction number validation equals 0, I can't enter anything, okay? So let's say if I enter a duplicate bank transaction, INV003, so I expect to get a 0 here. So let's say if I in 003, then I'll get a 0 here. So that I shouldn't be able to enter this transaction. So if I type 004, enter, so I should be able to enter. Just wipe out this transaction. Go to the transaction validation. Let me just select the whole column and then I press Alt-DL to bring up data validation and allow custom. Untick the ignore blank. Click the first cell of the column transaction number validation, which is AH8, and usually I'll press F4 3 times so that it only locks the column. So when the column equals 1, then I can enter, okay? So hopefully it works this time. Let me try. Let's say if I don't enter the transaction type, then I should expect a data validation. So I can enter that. And let's say if I enter a duplicate bank transaction, which is BINV003, I should expect a validation to block me from entering it. So let's say if I enter INV004, yeah, good, I can go through. So let's say if I enter a new revenue transaction, let's say this one, I can go through. If I enter the same revenue transaction, which is 003, I should be able to go through also. Enter a duplicate purchase transaction, I should be able to go through. Oops, sorry, 002, good. So I should be able to go through. So after I finish the validation, I'm going to add the conditional formatting. Go to the first cell of transaction number, which is row 8 here. Alt-OD, so that I can bring up the conditional formatting manager. Click the new row and use a formula to determine which cells to format. In the format cell, I'm going to select the first cell, which is this one. And usually it locks everything here. So usually I'll press F4 until I unlock the number, which is the row number, right? When this one equals 0, so that I can't enter anything, right? Then I should be able to format. Well, let me decide the format. I just put a white space, make it white instead of green. And the color is red because I shouldn't enter anything. So, okay. And then it applies to, let me select whole column of the transaction number, transnum, and then press OK. So here, let's say if I press P, then I should be able to enter whatever invoice number, right? Let's say if I put B and I input a duplicate invoice, then I get an error message and I have to retype, let's say whatever, and I go through. Okay, that's it for the transaction number. Yeah, thank you, bye bye.